right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. On behalf of Rob, Carey, and the ownership group, I want to thank Nathaniel Hackett for his contributions to the Denver Broncos. Decisions are hard. We've all enjoyed the relationship that we've developed with Nathaniel, the time that we've spent together, and getting to know him better as a coach and a person. The competitiveness our team has shown this year, despite the injuries and adversity, is a testament to Nathaniel and his leadership. I believe he will be a successful coach in the future, and we wish him the best. When we purchased this great franchise in August, this was not the season we were expecting, and it has been a season that's disappointing for our fans and what they deserve. Their loyalty and support through these difficult seasons has been incredible. I want to personally apologize to our fans and all of Broncos country. We know that we need to be better, and we will. The Denver Broncos are a proud franchise with a rich history and a winning tradition. As owners, it's incumbent on us to have high expectations, set a high standard, and ensure there is accountability. We talked about that at the beginning of the season. It was true then, and it's true now. It's also important for us to be realistic about where we are and the work that needs to be done. And that starts today with our head coaching search. I will lead a thorough process with input from our other owners and from George, who I have confidence in as our general manager. This will be a crucial offseason for us across our football operations. That's coaching, personnel, and support staff. We've got to get this right. I'd like to close by saying that even though the year is not gone as we had hoped, there are a number of bright spots. Our defense is among the best in the NFL. We have some emerging stars and proven veterans on both sides of the ball, and we're building a competitive foundation for the future. The new head coach we hire will have every resource available to them and the full support of our ownership group to build on our winning and championship tradition here. With that, I'll turn it over to George.
Thank you, Greg. And I also want to extend my sincere appreciation to Nathaniel, for his hard work and contributions to the Broncos. I've really enjoyed my time with Nathaniel over the past 11 months and the day-to-day, the grind, the adversity. Obviously, we went through a lot of adversity together. I feel like it brought us closer. We forged a good friendship out of that. The thing about Nathaniel, no matter how tough the times, he stayed the course, and he kept our team together. And when you lose 8 one-score games and you're out of the playoffs, it's hard to keep your team together. These guys fought for Nathaniel, and that's a credit to him, and that's a credit to his staff, and so I appreciate them. Nathaniel's a very good football coach, and he's even a better person, and it just didn't work out here, and that's on me. And as I told the players yesterday, I take full responsibility for where we are as a football team. I brought in the head coach. I brought in most of the players. Those are my decisions, and there's no one to blame but me. And I just want to be clear. This isn't just about the coaching. This isn't just about Nathaniel. This isn't about the entire football operation. This is about the personnel, the players, the staff, everyone involved with our football team. It has to be better across the board. I have to be better. We have a lot of work to do, and as I told the players and our staff yesterday, we're all being evaluated. Our record this year, and especially our performance on Sunday, is not what we're about. Sunday's game was unacceptable. It was embarrassing for everyone associated with this team. We have a lot of, it's nowhere close to our standard. And while we've played a number of close games and we've had our share of adversity and injuries, all that matters is winning. No one cares about the excuses, and we're not going to make them. We selected Jerry Rosburg as our interim head coach for the remaining 2 games. And Jerry, we're fortunate Jerry was available week 3 when we brought him along to help us with some game management. And Jerry quickly made his mark with the organization, his leadership, his attention to detail. He has a great pulse of the team. He's quickly grabbed the bull by the horns yesterday when I spoke with Jerry. and he's going to lead us these next 2 games, and I feel really good about Jerry. In closing, I challenged our team to finish the year on a winning note, to build for 2023, and we're going to embrace that challenge in front of us. I look forward to finishing this year strong and doing everything possible for us to find that next great head coach of the Denver Broncos. And with that, Greg and I are happy to take your questions.
Guys, if you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll find you with a microphone. Please state your name and affiliation before asking your question, as well as who is your question directed toward. Start to your right. Mike Liss.
Yes, Mike Liss with 9 News. Greg and George, I'll start with Greg. In your statement, you said you would be leading the search, and I was wondering if we could infer that the head coach would be reporting to you. And then with George, this is going to be your 3rd head coach in 3 years, and just how you see working with the dynamic of this next coach.
Yes, the new head coach will report to me, which is a more typical structure in the NFL. Obviously, the relationship between the general manager and the head coach is a critical one. And George is going to be intimately involved with this process of looking for a new head coach, and we'll make sure that there's a good fit there.
Yeah, Mike, I see the relationship just like the previous head coaches, collaborative, trust, a lot of communication, and I think that has to be with the head coach, the owner, and the general manager. There has to be constant collaboration. I see it working that way.
Parker Gabriel with the Denver Post. For each of you, I think, Greg, starting with you, when you said about putting out the process for finding a new head coach, what does that look like? And then I guess, George, the next part for you is, what did you learn from going through this process last year, and maybe where will the process look different this time?
Well, it's been 24 hours. Obviously, we're starting to do research on candidates that we'd want to look at. We'll run a full process. We'll have a really good group involved in our interview process, and we think we can find a great head coach for this organization.
It's pretty new here, 24 hours. So we'll get together and kind of, come up with, I know Greg has ideas of a search committee. What I learned. Learned a lot. You meet with 10 different candidates. You learn a lot about the candidates. Maybe we could have been a little more, talked to more candidates and had a wider net. I felt really good about our process, and I felt good about our decision at the time, and it just didn't work out.
Eric Dalal at DenverBroncos.com. Greg, for you, what qualities stand out as the most important ones that you're looking for in a new head coach? And then secondly, how can you rely on your corporate experience to help you in this search?
I've worked with a lot of great CEOs, and it starts with really strong leadership. I think that's going to be the most critical factor here in a head coach. Obviously, the X and O's are important, but we need a strong leader for this organization that's focused on winning. That starts with culture. It's instilling a sense of accountability, discipline, and we need an identity on offense. But at the starting point, it's got to be about culture and leadership, and those characteristics are what we'll be focused on the most.
Zach Stevens, DNVR. Greg, I have one for you and one for George as well. Greg, I know you've only been here a couple of months, but do you understand where fan frustration is after the past, not just this year, but 7 years in? What's your message to them? And then, George, after hiring a first-time head coach, is experience necessary and previous for this head coach?
The main message I said as from the beginning is I'm sorry to the fans. I think the frustration, obviously, of a number of losing seasons is high, but I think this season it's even higher because of the expectations that we had going in. We felt like we had a lot of pieces in place to have a very successful season. I know the players in this building we've got good players, and we didn't put the pieces together. And our fans have been patient. I think we've got the best fans in the world, but we need to put a better product on the field.
Yeah, I think if you have experience, it helps. It certainly helps, but it's not necessary. We're gonna keep an open mind through this search, and Yeah, if there's a quality candidate, it's experience, yeah, sure, certainly. But we're not going to limit ourselves just to the experienced candidates.
Jeff Legwald, ESPN. For both of you, 2 questions. The first being, do you have any concern as you go through this process? You're going to be searching for the 4th head coach in like a 5-year span. How are you going to express to candidates they will have an opportunity to succeed? And how did you come to the conclusion after what you've said about Nathaniel, he was not the guy after 15 games?
I'll answer the second one first. You have to look at the full body of work, and it wasn't just a decision based on what happened on Sunday. As George said, Sunday was an embarrassment to our organization. I know the players feel that way about it, the staff, ownership, everyone. But it wasn't just about Sunday. It was about the full body of work, and for a number of reasons, it wasn't the right fit. You want to take the first question?
Remind me again, Jeff, I'm getting old.
Yeah, me too. How are you going to express the candidate?
Yes, that's right. I think this is, we have a lot to offer here, and it starts with ownership and the resources they're going to put in to bring us back a championship. They're going to give us everything we need, this ownership group, Greg, Kerry, Rob Walton. And then, it's just an iconic organization. It's an easy sell. The fan base and the winning tradition, that's an easy sell. And then, I can sell this roster. We have a bunch of good young players. I think we have a long way to go. We have some good veteran players as well. We just, I think we have a foundation in place where, if we get the right head coach, we make some sound moves on the personnel end that, we can turn this thing around.
George Stoya, Denver Gazette. Obviously, head coach-quarterback relationship is key. How much will that play into this decision, finding someone that fits well with Russell, and also, obviously, Russell hasn't played up to expectations this year. What's your guys' confidence level with him going forward?
Yeah, I think it's really important that whoever we hire, has a relationship with the quarterback, Russ, whoever the backups, but the entire offense as well, the entire defense. We need someone, to fix the special teams, So really, the all 3 phases is what we want our coach to be an expert in, not just one person.
Darren McKee from Sports Radio 104.3 The Fan. Greg, this is for you. You said you have faith in George. Why? And why do you have faith that Russell Wilson is your future quarterback moving forward?
So the decision to have Russell here was a long-term one. This season has not been up to his standards or expectations. We saw some glimpses of it in the last few weeks. He knows he can play better. We know he can play better. And we know he'll do the right work in the offseason to be ready for next year. George and I have had a chance to get to know each other. We talk every day since we purchased the team a number of months ago. And he acknowledged right up front, there are a couple of decisions that haven't worked out as he had expected. But I understand his thought process. He understands the work that needs to be done in this offseason. And I'm going to rely on him heavily as we go through and make these changes.
Yeah, guys, for either one, this decision, I guess, reading between the lines is you think Russ is fixable if you get the right coach here. Why do you think Russ hasn't, diminished, and versus why you think he still can be a quarterback that was a top 10 quarterback 9 of his first 10 years in Seattle?
Well, Mike, we saw flashes of Russ this year. Russ even said he didn't play up to his standard. But, the first half of the Chargers game, the first half of the Raiders game, he finished strong. And so you can go through the season that you do see flashes. And he'll be the first one to tell you he didn't play up to his standard, didn't play up to our standard. He needs to be better. I don't think we made a coaching move based on Russ. That wasn't what it's all about. That's not why we're getting a new coach to turn around Russ. It's about the entire organization. It's about the entire football team. It's just not one player. It's not whether Russ is fixable or not. We do believe he is. We do.
George Arnie Stapleton from Associated Press. I know you were on board with Nathaniel when he, was interviewing, and he talked about kind of taking it easy at training camp to the regen days and the half speed and whatnot. But then you have experienced a rash of injuries, a rash of penalties. And I'm wondering if you think that maybe they weren't calloused for the season, and will you change your criteria in your head coaching search this year, given all that happened with Nathaniel, being kind of a player's coach and all his philosophies? Will you kind of go the other way, so to speak, in what you're looking for in a head coach?
Nathaniel brought that philosophy over from Green Bay, and they were one of the healthier teams. And so we brought the philosophy here. It didn't work for us. If it was that simple, we would have made a change. We would make the change moving forward. But it's not that simple. It's very complicated. The injuries, we've had like 4 coaches in 6 years. They've had injuries for the past 6 years. So, maybe you're right. Maybe we do need to be callous. Maybe we do need to practice harder. But this has been ongoing in Denver, the injury problems. And we've had a number of head coaches. And it's up to us to fix the problem and do a deep dive in our entire wellness, our training, our strength and conditioning, our nutrition. And so it's a bigger problem than just that. Obviously, every coach we talk to, we're going to discuss how they do it. How do you run practice? How do you see sports science? Catapult, GPS, and everything that's involved. And so there'll be big discussions with all the candidates, and at the same time, Greg, myself, Carrie, we'll be doing a deep dive into our organization and how we can fix things.
Troy Rink from ABC Denver 7. Greg, I see you at every game before the field. You meet with other owners. My question, has this been more difficult than you imagined? And because of your experience in corporate world and your success, how do you articulate to Bronco fans that it's fixable in a way that's, I guess, reasonable? Because it's been 7 years now, and these quick fixes, it just has not worked.
Yeah. This season has been more difficult than we expected. Again, it's not the season we were hoping for, expecting for, or feel that our fans deserve. I'm a big believer that if you start with the right culture, people, and you have the resources and expectations, we can build a winning football team here again. And I don't think that takes a number of years. Our focus should be on turning this around so that we're ready to go this coming season with the right pieces in place.
Andrew Mason, DenverFan.com. For both of you, you guys probably know an in-season dismissal of a coach is very rare. It's a little less rare after one season. So what happened this year that made this rise to the standard of Nathaniel Hackett not getting year 2?
Would have liked to have been patient until the end of the season and make a decision at that point. Didn't go into this week thinking this was a time we were going to make a change. But after we saw the effort that we put forward on Sunday, some of the things that were going on off the field, we just felt like it was time to make a decision. And once we had made that decision, it was, in all fairness to the organization and to Nathaniel, we felt we needed to move forward and make the change.
Greg, Nick Cosmetter with The Athletic. You mentioned in August when you guys came aboard that you were new to the pro sports business and that you were going to be doing a lot of learning. What over the course of the last 4 or 5 months have you learned that gives you confidence going into leading the search for such an important position?
Long list of things that we've learned. Everything from how you handle injuries, contracts, what goes on, day to day in a typical week. But at the end of the day, it comes down to people, and that's no different than any other organization that we've been involved with, whether it be in the business world or now in sports. And it comes down to people and culture. And again, that's where, with this head coaching search, that's where we're going to start and where we're going to be focused on finding the right person.
Greg, Park. with the Denver Post. When you talk about the sort of top to bottom analysis of your football operation, can you maybe provide a little more insight into what that looks like? And then is that something that as you interview coaching candidates that you want your next coach to be involved with, or is that more something, you know, that's ownership level in terms of trying to figure out what you think the best course for the football operation is?
New head coach will definitely be involved in that, but I tend to be impatient, and that's happening now. So we'll evaluate everything. George mentioned the injuries. That's been a real challenge. Carrie and I started, conversations with folks in the NFL office a month ago. We visited with Dr. Sills and others, just looking at our program. So we're not waiting for a head coach to start looking at what the changes that are needed here. But a head coach, when we find that person, they'll be deeply involved in how we move forward from that point.
Greg, Susie Wargin, KOA. You mentioned an identity for the offense, wanting that. What does that look like for you? And on the flip side of that, do you feel like this defense has their identity? I know there's always changes, but is the defense where you want it to be, and what does that identity look like for the offense?
George may want to elaborate on this, but yes, I'd say our defense has had a very strong identity. This past Sunday, I think, was the first time that slipped. On offense, it feels, again, I'm new to this, but as we watch the team week to week, even in game, there were times where there was not consistency, and so the focus needs to be on with a coach that comes in here, establishing what we want to be on offense, build the players and the scheme and the approach and culture around that. And I didn't see that consistency this year.
I'll just piggyback on what Greg had to say. I mean, defense, when you watch defense, my 14-year-old could watch our defense and say they're fast, they're physical, they're sound, and very disciplined on defense. And offense, it just changes from week to week. We didn't feel like, and a lot of it's with injuries, and and we really didn't have a foundation, an identity, a little bit of a hodgepodge, and that's again, a lot of that has to do with injuries, but just didn't feel like we could ever get that identity. Some games we could run it, other games, we weren't consistent running it. We were never really consistent throwing it, and so we just didn't have that identity, and we really don't have an identity on special teams either. We need to create that.
Hi, Alexabel Castro from Channel 11 in the Springs. For Greg, you had a few months to sit back and watch this NFL season for the first time. You're in it. What's the biggest observation you have being in this new world that you wouldn't know being out of it?
I had a good sense coming in of how powerful the NFL brand is and the allure of the teams and fans, but to see it firsthand starting in the preseason and to have so many of our fans show up for those preseason games that they're meaningful because it's the first time that the fans get a glimpse at the players, but they obviously don't mean anything in terms of the grand scheme of things and the record. And to see the passion of the fans for those games was really interesting to me, and that's carried throughout the year. This is the most amazing game, and we've got one of the most incredible franchises in the history here to build from.
Final two, Justin and then Jeff Ledwell.
Justin Adams, CBS News, Colorado. This is for you, Mr. Pinner. Building up a winning culture starts with the ownership first, and then it goes down to the general manager from there. As you go through this coaching search, how will you ensure that you have the winning culture ready to go for this team, just so that the general manager and also that the players can be able to be successful?
I think you're right. I think it does start with ownership, and the ownership being clear about what the expectations are, what the standard is. Part of this decision was seeing something that wasn't up to our standard and making the decision to move forward and have that clear to the whole organization. In terms of the head coaching search, our owners, Rob will be involved, Carrie, Condoleezza. Condi has great experience actually doing football searches. She was just a part of the Stanford football head coach search. And so we'll have a group of the owners that understand what our expectations are, and we'll be looking for that in the new head coach.
Jeff Legwald, for both of you, this is now 3 consecutive first-time head coaches that have been dismissed. Will that impact your search in any way? And will you consider any candidates who are currently on staff?
Yeah, we'll consider, we hope to interview Ejiro Evero for the position. I think I mentioned earlier, obviously experience is helpful, especially based on where we're at as a football team, but we're not going to limit ourselves. There's so many other good candidates. And so we're just excited to speak with them all and, look forward to the process.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Greg Penner and George Paton holding the news conference today, the day after they announced the firing of head coach Nathaniel Hackett. And as we get ready to wrap up the year 2022, you think of what a year it has been. It was 11 months ago today that the team hired Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach. And then it was 9 months ago they made a trade to get Russell Wilson here. It was 5 months ago the team was sold for $4.65 billion. And then a month later, they gave Russell Wilson that huge contract extension. And now yesterday, the head coach was fired. Certainly heard a lot of words from the owner of the team, Greg Penner, first talking about the decision to fire Hackett as being hard, but saying what happened on Sunday certainly accelerated the process of letting him go. He did say it wasn't the season they were expecting and personally apologized to the fans, saying they need to be better. What was interesting, I thought, was that Greg Penner said that the head coach will be reporting to him and said that's more standard. But Mike Kliss is joining us now. Mike, I tend to think of the head coach as reporting to the general manager in most National Football League teams, but Greg Penner made it clear that the head coach is going to have a direct line to the owner.
That's a new structure for the Broncos, no question about it. Let's say it's Jim Harbaugh, Frank Reich, who's going to be a candidate, Dan Quinn. They're going to report directly to Greg Penner. George Paton goes directly to Greg Penner. They'll still work together, the GM, George, and the new head coach. But what this means is George Paton returns, but he does lose just a little bit of power. He's not going to be necessarily overseeing the entire football operations. Greg Penner as CEO is going to do that, and that'll be interesting to see. Also, Greg Penner is going to be leading the head coaching search. George Paton did it before. After an exhaustive search, he actually went out and visited with all these head coaching candidates, 10 of them, in 8 different cities in 2 weeks, wound up with Nathaniel Hackett. George was in charge of that coaching search. After he picked Hackett, Greg Penner is going to be the guy who picks it this time.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting also when they talked about experience. I think almost everyone presumed that this next head coach is going to have head coaching experience, likely in the National Football League. But George Paton wouldn't go there. He said experience is not necessary. They're not going to be limited to those coaches with experience. And then the first official name being mentioned came at the end of the press conference when they said they do want to talk to the defensive coordinator, Ejiro Evero.
Yeah, you can't announce that it's just going to be experienced head coaches who you're going to pick. You have to, via the Rooney Rule, you have to interview 2 diversity candidates, Ejiro Evero, and the diversity candidates right now, just because the way the NFL has operated for years and years and years, right now there's quality candidates, but they haven't been given a shot yet. So you can't limit yourself to just experienced candidates if you're going through that. So Ejiro Evero is a strong candidate. D'Amico Ryans, defensive coordinator for the 49ers, a strong candidate. Of course, Eric Bieniemy from Colorado and the Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator. He's interviewed numerous times over the recent years for a head coaching job, hasn't got one yet. So there's some quality diversity candidates that are out there that the Broncos want to take a look at. But I do think I think they're going into this process, Tom, wanting experience. And that is because their 3 previous head coaches were first-time head coaches. Vance Joseph, Vic Fangio has all the experience in the world, just not as a head coach, and it's a different deal. And Nathaniel Hackett, I think they want someone who has thrown a challenge flag before, who has called a timeout, and in the final 2 minutes of a game at the right time. And that's why I think the big four for the Broncos are Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and I know it might not be likely to get those two, but I think they'll take a swing, and Frank Reich and Dan Quinn. Those are all coaches who have previous head coaching experience.
Although one name that would blend both diversity and experience would be Jim Caldwell, who's also out there. He might also very well be on their list. I want to ask you about whoever that next head coach is. The issue is really going to be central is to Russell Wilson. And George Paton said Russ needs to be better. He also said Russ is fixable. But they certainly talked about what's been a very disappointing year for their new quarterback. That's going to be, you talk about throwing a challenge flag. The coach's challenge here will not be about a replay or a timeout. The coach's challenge here will be to fix Russ.
Exactly. And I think... and I don't think this was necessarily Hackett's fault, but think about why Russ left Seattle. I mean, it didn't work out there. He did not want that. I think Russ felt like he was inhibited by the offense in Seattle. He wanted to expand. He wanted to have authority to change the play at the line of scrimmage. He wanted authority to call plays, be involved with the game plan, and that's all fine. But we saw was a Russell Wilson who tried to play for the pocket. He tried to be a passer for the most part, as Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, who had long NFL careers. Russell Wilson just turned 34. He wants to play till he's 45, is what he said at his opening press conference, and that means running less, getting hit less. Well, in the pocket, he's getting hit too. And Russell Wilson is an athletic quarterback. He's a dual threat quarterback. That's what makes him effective. And he has to get back to that. And he has to get back to the specific system that fits his skill set. And that's with the new coach, with experience, I think, and with the type of power and leadership to convince Russ this is what he needs. That's who the Broncos are going to be looking for here in 2023.
Yeah, and maybe more games in London or more games against the Cardinals. Those seem to work this year. Mike, I know we're going to have much more on this coming up on 9 News at noon. There certainly is a lot to talk about. We'll see you there in about 90 minutes. Thanks for joining us now. That is going to do it for us in this special report, taking a look at the Broncos as they turn the page from Nathaniel Hackett. Again, we'll have much more coming up on 9 News at noon, certainly much more available at 9news.com.